Good evening. I would like to call the Tuesday, November 13th meeting of the St. Charles County Council to order. To begin with, would you please rise for the invocation led by Joe Cronin, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by John White.
Heavenly Father, thank you for the people that have come here this evening. Help us listen to each other and guide us through the evening discussions. We pray for wisdom and courage to overcome any obstacles during this meeting and for your Spirit to guide our words and actions. We pray for your peace today and let any negative moments be turned into opportunities to resolve our differences. In that we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Joe Cronin.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brazel.
Here.
Councilmember Nancy Matheny.
Here.
Councilmember Paul Wynn. Councilmember Terry Hollander. Councilmember Jerry Daugherty.
Here.
Councilmember John White.
Here.
First item on the agenda is public comments. During public comments, we ask for speakers from the audience to come forth. You can talk about any item, whether it's on the agenda or not. Once we start a topic, we like to stay on that topic until we've had as many as 6 speakers. We alternate pros and cons. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, that you keep it civil, and that you fill out a speaker's card either before or after you speak, but sometime before you leave, and give it to one of the ladies at the table. And lastly, when you come to the podium, please state your name and your address. Would you like to come forward?
I'm in a hurry. I know everybody else is too. Okay, I filled out a card. My name's Kevin Dalton. I live at 731 Highway W in Forestell, which is unincorporated St. Charles County. First, I want the council to know that me and several other people really do appreciate the support on August 27th to turn on the cell tower off of Westmire Road. I mean, there was a lot of people that were really happy about it, and we're really glad that this council is working with us on this. I just received a letter from Brian Cave from St. Charles Tower about a possible lawsuit in federal court. And from what I understand, I have not studied this whole case yet that's been brought to my table again. But from what I understand, it's because there was no record of denial submitted by St. Charles County to St. Charles Tower. Me and several other people are very concerned about this. For several reasons, St. Charles Tower application should be denied in its entirety. I hope that Mr. Ellis and St. Charles County will work with me to resolve this issue. Me and several others hope that St. Charles County will spend time to upgrade themselves, knowledge themselves, to change rules and regulations over the cell tower situation that's been going on in this county for a while now. I came here to say that, and I also would like to know who to give this to. This is a letter I got from St. Charles Tower that I want to be sure that Mr. Ellis does get.
Okay, if you would turn it over to one of the ladies at the table, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak on this item with an opposing view? If not, is there anyone to speak on this item with the same view? Okay, new topic. Yes, sir.
My name is John Kajar, and I'm the applicant for Bill 3906, and it's for some campsites at a piece of property I own at the end of Highway C. After the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, I prepared a letter which was to the St. Charles County Council members asking it to be amended, my original application to be amended to 14 sites. And I'd like to submit that to you now. I'm not sure if you got it in your packets. And I also have a petition I put together and an amended site plan that I would like you to see. With your permission, may I hand those to you?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
The two main things, basically the letter is asking to reduce the size of the application from 50 lots to 14 campsites. And in addition to that, I would explain that I went to my neighbors and other property owners in the area, and I talked about my project and asked them to sign a petition to see if they were in favor of it. And at the time, I received 22 signatures from not only people in the area, but from other property owners that are directly in the area of this property. On the site plan, which is on the last page, it shows the 14 lots laid out, and then there's a green line, and that's like a shrubbery line, which would be part of the recommendations from the Planning and Zoning Office. So I already started that line. I went and got about 23 trees, and I planted them on that line to show that I was interested in working with anybody who was in opposition to this. Since then, I've also had a meeting with Wayne Anthony, and where I believe that you do have a copy of some kind of a, let's see here, it's called, in order to clarify and ensure the council's correct information regarding the case of 1623, and then he's written some kind of letter, and in that letter there's recommendations for suggested conditions for approval, and I've read the conditions, and I'm in complete agreeance and would love to be able to be in compliance with that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have at this time.
Okay, at this time, it's just public comments. We don't
Okay.
discuss at this time. So if that's all your comments.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. And that was a speaker in favor of Bill 3906. Is there anyone in opposition of Bill 3906?
My name is Drew Weber, 200 North 3rd Street, St. Charles, Missouri. Madam Chairman, members of the council, if it pleases the council, I represent Darden Realty Company. And Darden Realty Company is a neighboring landowner to the Kajar property, and as such has standing to oppose this application. Now, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denial of the conditional use permit application at the last hearing. Afterwards, as Mr. Kajar stated, he amended the application to include only 14 sites. Now, this number 14 is not a random number. It was chosen because the campground and travel trailer park permit standards require a campground to have a bath or shower facility for every 15 campsites. And so at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, there was a discussion regarding whether construction of such facilities was possible under the UDO because of the dry floodproofing requirements. It is our position that it is not possible, but in any event, Mr. Kajar amended his application to avoid that issue. And this is actually the third iteration of his plan. The first was for 81 campsites, then 50, and now 14. In his letter to the council, Mr. Kajar states, if the council would consider this amended application for approval, this would allow us to see how the public responds to the project. So he's basically planning to develop this campground in phases, and that's even recognized in the staff report, which discusses development in phases. Now, adopting such a wait-and-see approach to planning doesn't promote the general welfare of the county, the Kajar property, and Kajar's father, who owns the adjoining marina. There's been multiple violations in their history that show a disregard for county rules, and there's no reason to suspect that that would not continue. Now, there are sewage issues here. In order to comply with the conditions referred by Mr. Anthony, which Mr. Kajar mentioned, Mr. Kajar must provide individual RV site connections to a waste disposal system or an RV recreational vehicle waste disposal system. Well, the current site plan that was provided to me, and I assume he just provided you a copy with the same thing, does not contain any indication of the method of sewage disposal. So it's an incomplete site plan. It just is consistent with this entire process where he amends it at a whim, and this does not have a complete proposal. There's also traffic and safety issues to consider with this application. There's only one road in and out, that's Highway C. And during the time of flood, portions of Highway C that are flooded by the adjacent creeks before the river may flood the property. So there's times where you can't get out. And so if we have 14 under this site plan, or potentially 50 or 81 RVs that are unable to escape, that's an obvious safety issue. Am I cut off?
Well, you can make your final
All
statement.
right, my final statement is that the Darden Realty Company requests the County Council to uphold the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation of denial.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in favor of Bill 3906?
I came to speak on behalf of Two Branch Marina, or John Kazar's properties. My family, my wife, and 2 kids left boating and camping for over 12 years at Lake of the Ozarks, and we wanted to find something closer to home and a bit quieter. We looked up and down the river and decided to gamble on Two Branch Marina, or John Kazar's properties. Well, the gamble paid off, as we now have 2 boats, 2 wave runners, and a camper there, all due to their great business and outstanding customer service that they provide. They are great people who run a great business in a great community. Not only do they own my favorite marina there, but they hands down own the best and my favorite restaurant in St. Peter's Calico's. If they are allowed to expand and grow their business, they will be hands down everybody's favorite marina. And if he's worried about the flooding that's on Highway C, there's 40 or more campers right on the other side that have been there for a long time. So he's only asking for 14. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in opposition of Bill 3906? Is there anyone else in favor of Bill 3906?
Thank you. This is very, very simple for me. This is a wonderful place to stay. It's quiet, and as an 81-year-old bachelor that has only one companion, a 3-year-old Yorkshire Terrier, I'm enjoying the area very much. It's clean, and the neighbors are very friendly. It is just good territory, and I love being in the country and still be within 6 miles of anything that I need, which is Mid-Rivers Mall and Old St. Peter's. And hopefully that we can still live there for a long time.
And is there a last speaker on Bill 3906 on either side? Okay, moving on to the next topic. Who would like to start it? Yes, sir.
My name's Bob Held. I live at 150 Homestead Bridge on Highway F. And we went to the council meeting, or to the Zoning and Planning Commission meeting, and we raised a concern about a fence being put up adjacent to our property. Half the Burke's property, who are neighbors that applied for the bed and breakfast, have an open area, a small area for people to walk around. And we have a large piece of property where people could easily walk onto our property, and we're concerned about the liability. So the Planning and Zoning unanimously said they needed to put up a fence. Since that's transpired, T-posts have been put up with a strand of barbed wire, and that's it. So I guess we're asking more for clarification to the Burkes about what they are going to put up and what they should put up. And, you know, the comment was made that by one of the Planning and Zoning members that it's obvious that people are going to walk onto our property just because it's beautiful and there's not a large area to walk within their property. And so that is the reason that they suggest putting the fence up. The second concern is down on Highway F, that whatever sign they put up doesn't block our view of seeing traffic on the highway, because there's not a long stretch of open area. It's a lot of turns and that, and it would be difficult to see down the highway if there was a large sign put up for the bed and breakfast. I have some visuals. I don't know if you need to see them, or I can leave them with someone that shows what they've done so far on the fence.
You could leave them with the ladies at the table, but also, Mr. Anthony, could you tell me your name one more time?
Bob Held.
Bob Held. Could you contact him if he leaves his name at the table regarding the requirements for the fence and that sort of thing? Okay, somebody will call you the next day or two.
Okay, the concern is that the barbed wire is at a level where anybody could walk into it, from our property going down or from their property coming over. It's just...
Well, go ahead and put it on the overhead if that's what you have a picture of.
Well, this is how they marked it next to where they park, so they don't walk into it. It's actually upside down.
What they did is they have the barbed wire strung, and then they wrap some kind of twining around it.
It's a yellow nylon rope is what they put around it, just in that one section.
Okay.
And we're assuming it's because they don't want somebody walking into it.
And then this is, on our property line, they just have barbed wire.
Okay.
So it's dangerous.
Okay. When we get to that point in the agenda, we will be discussing the bill.
Okay, so
If
we
you
should
want to
stay?
stay for a while.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll be discussed, but also Mr. Anthony will contact you the next day or two.
And Mr. Anthony?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay? Is there anyone else to speak on Bill 3905? Any other topic? Sir, I believe you were next.
My name is Greg White. I'm an attorney and I office in Clayton, 8000 Bonham. I'm here today to speak on behalf of Mr. Dave Dempsey and a number of residents in the Augusta area on the FCC tower, Ordinance 11-103, the Emergency First Response System. I appreciate the opportunity. And thank everybody here. I've had the privilege of practicing before County Executive Yeoman when he was Judge Yeoman. I consider this a privilege today, and I come here with the same respect. This is a major project. I was just contacted day before yesterday. In fact, if Jerry Wallach is actually the individual who was contacted, Mr. Wallach is in trial this week. If he weren't, he'd be sitting here making the comments, and I wouldn't be. The concern, obviously, is that this is a major project. We understand that it was done in conformity with FCC rules and regulations. We don't come before the County Council today to Monday quarterback anybody. You could have, you should have, you ought to have. Nor do we want to be Monday quarterbacked either in this respect. It's something that's relatively new. I've been absolutely impressed by the amount of information that's been acquired by Mr. Dempsey, but it's been rather difficult consuming it all at once. The big concern here today is the lack of involvement of the citizens who will be affected. In the opportunity we would ask for to be involved. The invocation today was wonderful, that we may have wisdom, that we may turn problems into opportunities. And this is the spirit with which the citizens come before you today to employ the basic principles of good government. I took a look at the ordinance. The ordinance gives County Executive Ellman the opportunity to contract with Motorola. I've looked at the variety of exhibits. We've been told that there is a tower proposed to be on Schlossberg Road in the Augusta area, that it is to be 500 feet, and yet in the exhibits I haven't seen that. Maybe it's there, we just haven't had the opportunity. But this is going to affect the people who own property in that area. We understand the resolve of the County Council in having to employ this, and we ask you respect our resolve as well. Mr. Brazel, County Councilman Brazel, has been very, very helpful in trying to give us the information that he can in the short span of time with which we've had to work with it. We don't want to overwhelm the situation. Dave is going to speak here in a moment as to some of the facts. We would like to have a group of people, small group of people, that could come and reasonably discuss the different matters involving these towers and the possible different ways to employ other systems. With that, not overwhelming again, but the information from the Napa Valley, from St. Louis County, etc., could be awfully helpful, and I think address the concerns that are with these citizens. I thank you for the opportunity today, and I believe, Dave, there has to be opposition to be invited first. Thank you so much, Council.
Thank you. Well, the elephant in the room is now before us. Is there anyone to speak in favor of cell towers? Moving on, then we'll have up to 6 speakers that are against.
These are not cell towers.
911 towers, voice only.
My name is David Dempsey. My address is 1498 Boone Woods Trail in Augusta, Missouri. It's nice to see you all again. I was here 2 weeks ago when I had just found out about this 500-foot radio tower. So I am here, and we are here, many people, to update you on the information that we have gathered on the proposed 500-foot self-supporting tower on Schlossberg Road. We believe that there is a less costly and less impactful solution that will not hurt property values and the wine tourism business out there. Again, let me reiterate that we are not against improving the first responder network. We understand it's necessary, but we are against the lack of foresight to the impact on the beauty, economy, and environment of our historic Augusta Wine District. The wine tourism industry produces $175 million to our state. Augusta is the oldest wine growing region in the United States. It is also historic Boone country. Daniel Boone, when asked why he chose this area, simply said because of its beauty. The county has made no effort to determine the potential economic impact resulting from placing a tower nearly as tall as the Gateway Arch right along the wine trail, where thousands of people come to enjoy the views for a day, a weekend, or a lifetime. There has been no weight given to the chilling effect this size tower will have to property values. But the economic impact is already being felt. We understand that a buyer that had 20 acres under contract in the area learned of the proposed tower and canceled his contract. I met with an appraiser today. My business is property tax consulting. I deal with property values all the time and the impact of certain issues with each specific property. So again, I was meeting with an appraiser on another property that we're going to the State Tax Commission on. And he said, what am I working on? I told him this. He said, oh, he had to go to court on behalf of numerous property owners on a similar sized tower being erected. He found in that case that overall property values were impacted on average 20%. We estimate that there is at least $100 million of property that will be affected, plus an additional loss of business that would total well over $20 million in loss of value to the county property and business owners. This means less income tax dollars to the state, less property tax dollars to the county and the schools, and less sales tax dollars to St. Charles County as well. We were told last time that no alternatives were considered, but that's not true. There was one suggestion that would utilize the existing 325-foot tower at 796 Osage Ridge. We were told that it would work, but that a supplemental tower would have to be erected at Schlossberg of 200 feet, but it would cost more money, maybe $500,000 more. But we struggle with how using an existing tower and building a much shorter 200-foot tower is going to cost $500,000 more. When discussing the costs with a tower erection company that I talked with and our telecommunications consultant that I've hired, I was told the proposed 500-foot self-supporting tower is 5 times more expensive than a 500-foot guide tower, which is much thinner and could be built in a cow pasture, not on such a high-profile site as Schlossberg. And it certainly does not add up to us that utilizing a 325-foot existing tower and building a 200-foot tower, that it's going to cost more than that 500-foot self-supporting tower. This is going to be like 40 feet wide and like an Eiffel, not as wide as the Eiffel Tower, but you got to imagine the size of this thing. So we're asking the council to ask for the hard costs on this project and to look for additional less costly solutions. We're asking the council and County Executive Ailman to seek a separate, a legal opinion really separate from the county executive's opinion. We believe that there's a conflict of interest that you both have the same attorney, and you're being advised that you don't even need any county approval or the county council, because everybody else knows that if I wanted to build this tower, I'd have to get a conditional use permit and a variance because it's not allowed.
Are you almost finished?
Yes. We know that St. Louis County is utilizing 25 sites with 21 within its borders, and they will be building 8 or 9 new towers, but the tallest will be topping out at 250 feet. We don't think it is a coincidence that they are topping out at 250 feet. They know that new 500-foot towers would impact their citizens and businesses and have come up with a plan that utilizes more towers with less height. We also know that this is what Napa Valley's wine district did. None of their towers are over 200 feet, and they will be camouflaged to additionally indicate the impact from their installation. We think that it's pretty straightforward to find alternatives that will work. You know the peaks and valleys, the elevations, if you will, and you know the coverage area. Then you plat out the towers and their needed heights. But we've seen no alternatives. The other big issue is time. We understand that this must be operational by the end of 2013. So time is of the essence. One additional thought on the timing of this. There are many counties, we found out, through the United States that did not pass a voter-approved tax increase. Guess what they're doing? These counties, although required by the federal mandate to build it, don't have the money and are not building the system. They're claiming that it is a non-funded federal mandate. We believe further research is needed to confirm this.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, let me just summate that Napa did this without the impact. St. Louis County is doing it, and so can we. Thank you for your time.
Okay, if there is another speaker on this topic, would you come forward? And I ask that you please hold your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm a recent home buyer in the where this tower is being implemented. I just want to say I am one of the things that attracted me here to the St. Charles area, especially in the area that I live in, is it's extremely beautiful, and I happen to be one of those individuals that wants to eventually grow grapes in the area. I appreciate communications. I was a military officer for 20-some years, so I understand the very importance of that. But what I am very concerned as an older individual, as you can see, probably many of us here are probably a little older, retired, and we have probably planted seeds in the area, and we don't have a lot of money other than probably our homes that we have purchased up there. But one of the things that I wanted to do when I purchased that home was that I wanted something to be a place where it would be quiet, it would be beautiful, and I would have good neighbors. And it seems that I have that right now. And I believe that by putting this tower there, and I've lived near communications tower, very noisy. You can hear them for hundreds and hundreds of yards away. So I'm very concerned that if you implement something like that, that it's going to be not only a sore site, but also a very noisy piece of equipment. I just want to say that I wish that I was part of a group of people that had probably tried to do some of the planning, probably find a location where we could put such a structure. But at this point, it seems like When I purchased my property, I was not aware that this was coming down, so this is a total surprise to me. Otherwise, I would not have purchased this piece of property. Unfortunately, I probably can't get out of it because of the current market conditions. I'm also very concerned that, does the county really have that kind of money to implement something like this? I know it's a federal mandate, but I am very concerned that during these economic times that there are probably other things that we can do. I understand this is a very important project and it's a federal mandate, but I'm just very concerned that that there might be some other less costly solution, and certainly, can we challenge the government in putting something like this, or are we still required to do this? I do thank you for your time, and I do hope that you will reach out to the community and see if we can work together to find some other alternative. I am very certain that there are other alternatives, other structures where we might be able to do maybe some vertical leasing of other sites so that we can put our, these transponders to make communication requirements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there another speaker on this topic? Yes, sir. And then, gentleman in the back, you'll be the final speaker.
My name is Sam Stang. I own the glass blowing shop in Augusta, and my wife and I own a house at 512 Schloosberg Road. My understanding is that they're considering to site the property directly next to my house for this tower in 500 Schloosberg. That property's been for sale for a number of years. It's bank owned at this point, and I think that that's probably the attraction. I don't really know all the details of this yet. This whole thing came as a big surprise to me and my wife, and I can't for the life of me understand how a tower could be put on that site. It would be the property isn't terribly wide, but I think what I'd like to ask here is would it be possible for any of the citizens to view a site plan or to know any more information? My understanding so far is that this whole thing has been fairly secretive, and I guess I'm asking, would you be willing to share more information with us?
Again, this is our time to listen to you. I know personally I do not know one site of a tower. It's not been something we've been doing, but it's not the time for us to answer your questions.
Okay.
We just listen.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And the final speaker, yes, sir.
My name is Donald Struckoff. I live at 5266 Hackman Road at Augusta. I'm on the board of the Augusta Fire Protection District. One of the reasons why this tower is the size and the position that it is that the fire district and the whole county, matter of fact, there's 2 counties in Illinois and 3 counties in the state of Missouri is going to what they call an 800 megahertz system. Right now, we're at we're in the neighborhood of 150. The characteristic of the radio waves in the 800 megahertz system is that they don't go around things very well. You almost have to have line of sight to be able to talk to an antenna. It works better in a built-up area where you got concrete and buildings and highways to bounce the signal off of. When you get in a rural area with foliage and dirt, the radio waves just don't bounce. The fact that this thing is 400 or 500 feet tall seems extreme. However, you have to almost add 60 feet to the surrounding territory, because when the trees get leaves on, these radio waves don't penetrate foliage very well. Matter of fact, cornfields and things just suck it up. We're on the end of the county that we're part of it, and we're part of the radio system in the county, so they want to put this there. So if we want to have communications from any area, we almost have to be able to see it. with the topography that we have there, even when you draw a 500-foot tower where it is right now in the area of Slousburg, some places we won't be able to see the tower from there, and if you can't see it, you probably can't have radio contact. Now, I know what it's like to sit out there with a dead person or a dying person with no radio contact, and it's not good. So these are some of the problems that the company is having to deal with. I don't know any other where any of the other towers are going to be put on, or the locations that they're trying to make this thing a system. The Front Range, like along the Katy Trail, I don't care where you put it. Site in St. Charles County probably can't hit it. So these are some of the things that the company has to be thinking about while they're doing this, and this is one reason why that Front Range of hills is probably going to have to be one of the sites to put this tower. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the 911 tower discussion. Is there another topic that someone would like to speak?
Before we get into that, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules so I can make a couple comments since this issue is not going to be publicly discussed. And I'd just like to make some points real quick. Make a motion, second from anybody? These people drove a long way to...
I'll make that second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
What would be your time? I think that's...
Give me 5 minutes.
I'll go along with that. Okay. Is that all right with you? All right, 5 minutes.
Okay, I'd just like to make a couple comments here. I've been getting a lot of phone calls on this issue, and on the ordinance that the county council passed this ordinance a year and a half ago, ordinance 11-103, and I signed it. I was the council chairman at the time, which is bringing me a lot of friction, because when I signed this ordinance, it's a 7-page document, if you read it. And it's very vague. It talks about the county executive administration, gives them full authority to administrate all contracts and initiate land acquisitions, blah, blah, blah. But nowhere in here does it specifically say what exactly that open checkbook, or whatever you want to call it, gives the administration. Right or wrong, it really hurt my district terribly, because we won't have any public comments on these towers, nor will we have any public discussion. So if you go to the ordinance and you look at the exhibits, there's exhibits A through P and a contract. Well, here it is, 700 pages. 700 pages of documents that the council members were supposed to read, which I didn't. I didn't read it, but even I read it, I'm reading it now, and nowhere in here does it say anything about 500-foot towers. Nowhere in here does it say anything about waiving the planning and zoning process and waiving the public comment process. So I've been extremely disappointed about this whole process, and I made it very clear to the administration and to the council. And the only questions that I've asked out of the administration, which is what the people in this area are asking for, it's not that we do understand the importance of good communication, and it's not a dispute. What the dispute is we're saying, okay, can we have the factual data, what it would take if we were to make 3 150-foot towers instead of one 500-foot tower, or 180, or whatever it would take. Right now there's a 180-foot tower or 160-foot tower on Slousburg, which has been there a long time, and we've accepted that. But why not distribute some of the towers around and not put an Eiffel Tower on the top of Slousburg that will be approximately 1,400 foot tall with the elevation, which everybody will see from the county. And it's the wine district. It's a terrible decision. It's a horrible decision. And it's going to pollute the air. It's going to pollute the views for the whole wine vista, from everywhere. So my questions were simple. All I've asked the administration to do is give me the factual data, the actual data, from engineers to say, if we move the tower somewhere else, maybe perhaps a 200 or 300-foot tower on perhaps Osage Ridge Road, where that's a 5-mile county road, there's not a house on it, and then maybe put 2 or 3 150-foot towers up. That's what I'm asking for, and I think that's what the people in my area are saying. Can't we just look at different solutions? Can't we look at something different? And if it comes back and say it's $2 million, we don't have the money, then fine, we'll have the discussion, but not to get any kind of feedback or any factual information instead of maybe this or should or what. That's what I feel we're getting. I don't feel that the people in the area is getting responses. And that's all I wanted to say on that issue.
Okay, are you finished?
Yeah, thank you for
Okay.
letting me say that.
I would like to add to that of the new towers that are being proposed for St. Charles County, I truly do not know where they are. The only reason the Schluersburg has come up is because somebody saw a car and looked into who it was. Now, that being so, we haven't been involved in the process as county council members. It's gone to an outside third-party, independent, how do we get the best signal? That being said, most places don't have the same issue that you all do. You're probably the only tower that is 450 feet. And so that's all I'm going to say about this issue. It's not really our time to discuss it. There's a study going on, and you'll probably hear more about it. Do you want to add anything, County Executive?
Just some information on towers in St. Louis County.
Yeah, I got a phone call from St. Louis County concerned because staff of the council had called over there about the 8 or 9 towers that they're in the process of building, which are in the 200 to 250 foot range. But they wanted to make sure I understood that they already have existing towers, 2 at 1,000 feet and a couple at 500, and some in the 400 to 450 range. And I said, well, I'm glad you told me. I'd already heard that at other meetings. Did you tell council staff that? And they said no. So I alerted the staff of the council that they might want to follow back up with them, because that information, that's what they're left building, is in areas where the ground levels and the terrain reflect that that's all that they need. And then in addition to that, I think there's several towers, up to 18 from what I understand, being built in Jeff County. And because the terrain is similar in those areas, many of them are at 400 to 450 feet.
It is a problem, I know, that in the research that I did, as well as other members of the council, as well as the council staff, they found the Appalachian Trail has somewhat of a similar issue with trying to get emergency communication. Also, I found out that there is a 500-foot tower in St. Charles off of St. Peter's Howell Road. I haven't gone to look at it yet. But please keep in mind that we are not part of that process. You have a council person that represents you, and as you can see, he feels passionately about this, and I'm sure he will do what he can. Is there anyone to speak on any other topic?
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
I would just say the last gentleman did a better job of explaining the science than those 3 engineers we had at the last work session. But I don't know if if that work session is available on our television channel. But the engineers went into great detail explaining some of those problems that we have. Believe me, if we could build a shorter tower, we would. But that particular work session has a lot of information. It might be worthwhile for people to look at as to why it has to be here or why it has to be a certain height. And like I said, the last gentleman gave a great summary of it. But if you want more technical explanation, you might be able to get that.
It is online, as well as a broad map with just a general idea as to where the new 11 towers would be located. I haven't looked at it yet, but it is available. Is there anyone to speak on any other topic this evening? Okay, that closes public comment. If you all would like, we'll take a 30-second recess and let you clear the room, unless you'd like to stay and hear the rest of our conversations.
See, the thing is that I appreciate you guys letting me say that, because I get a shit ton of heat on this thing, you know? But it's like...
I kept seeing you. You were at the bottom of the page.
Your comments, appreciate it. And good, excellent.
Oral report from the county executive.
Chairman?
Yes.
Your mic is on.
I just turned it on.
After you get order, I will announce that I have no oral report.
As soon as you can be heard, right? I just turned it on.
Madam Chairman, you don't have a quorum.
It's all right.
I thought about that. I'm not going to vote for that person.
We are waiting for a quorum. So Mr. Doherty or Mr. White, if you could hear me. Still waiting on a quorum. All right, we have a quorum. Thank you, Mr. White. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Move to approve?
Any items to be removed?
Yes. Pardon me. I would like to pull out the Parks and Recreation and also the corrections.
Second.
Motion and a second to remove Parks and Recreation as well as corrections. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Motion.
There's a motion and a second from Mr. Brazel. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, down to items removed from the consent agenda, Parks and Recreation. Mr. Cronin.
I've got a lot of questions on this one. I've been to the Youth Activity Park, and it's a nice facility, but this is $42,000 for a sign. And I think it's directly, tied into also to Bill 3911, which is raising the fees substantially to the kids and families that use that park. So, I don't know if I'm prepared to support this yet, because from what I'm seeing is we're buying a very expensive fancy sign, and then we're jacking up the fees to the kids and the families that use that park. And in Bill 3911, it's later on. So I would like a little bit more detail, and maybe I can get that from Betty before the next meeting. But that's what it looks to me, and I think a lot of people will interpret that way. They'll say, oh gosh, they got a new sign at the Youth Activity Park, but now where it used to cost us this amount of money, now it's cost us, some of the fees that I saw look like they almost doubled. And maybe I'm wrong about that, so maybe you can enlighten me, Betty.
Well, referencing the sign first, since the day that the park opened, we had a very simple sign that's out there. And at the time when the park did open, we were really the primary people along Highway Inn at that spot. The church was up a little further, but it was our park area that was there. But subsequently, the development arrived around us with the movie theater, with the shopping center, and so on. And what we were having was a lot of feedback from people trying to find the park. They just could not see our little sign that we've had there. So we really listened to what people were asking for, a better identity for the location, and as well as being able to have the ability, this would have the scrolling information available that we could put up when there's special events and there's specials and things like that. So it would be a true marketing piece as well, an advertising piece. Relative to the fees being proposed tonight, that also was in answer to users, and in particular families. They were asking us to try and get family memberships or individual memberships, because we have quite a few young people that come 3 to 4 times a week to that park. And for a family, again, if someone has a couple of children doing that, that's almost $100 a month that they're spending for admission fees. So in terms of these new fees with the family and individual memberships, that's a much better deal for those frequent users.
I read 3911, and I didn't quite see it that way. And maybe there's a possibility that we could get, since this is just in for introduction, we get a grid showing the old fees to the new fees and the percentage
Sure.
of increase?
Absolutely.
I'd appreciate that. It would help me make the
Absolutely.
decision on this. I'd also, having bought quite a few signs myself for a business on a main thoroughfare. $42,000 is a lot of money for a sign. I'd kind of like to see a picture of this sign. I know what the old one looks like. I know in the documents from Pyro Signs, there's a sketch of it. So I mean, if it's possible, you could communicate
Sure.
that to the council prior to
Absolutely.
the next meeting. I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And thank you for your time.
You bet.
Before you leave, are there any other questions on this item? I have a question for you on this sign. I find that many of these moving signs by heavily trafficked roads tend to distract drivers. I find them distracting. Could you tell me what road this is on and what the traffic is like on that road?
It's within Darden Prairie. It is Highway N. It's between, if you're familiar with the Catholic church that's up on the corner of, I'm trying to think of the Immaculate Conception Church. Traffic is, there is certainly a speed limit within that stretch of Highway N, because it is within the Darden Prairie city. I think in terms of showing where the youth activity park is and what is going on there, it would be a very wise investment to get people in there. It's not like they're going 50 miles an hour on that road, on that stretch there, not by any means. The estimated life on this sign is 17 years, so we view it as a solid investment in that sense. We need to be able to tell the folks what's going on there.
Okay, thank you.
I have one last question, please.
Yes.
Is Darden Prairie, are they good with this? I mean,
Yes.
You have talked to them about it?
Yes.
Okay.
We made sure that it fit within their
Parameters.
zoning, yep.
Okay.
And the next item, corrections?
Yes, Mr. Gross had answered a lot of the questions I had about the corrections bill earlier, but the last question, well, I can ask you about it as well. Reading the feedback from the different counties that sent things in regarding to CHC, I thought some things were kind of interesting. For instance, Buchanan County made a mention about physicals, and the one captain said, we don't do that here for prisoners. And then some of the other, like Jefferson County, didn't have dental under the contract. And I guess Mr. Gross and Mr. Ellman seem to indicate that we have to do that. They have to have access to dental. They have to have access to physicals. And I would like to know a little bit about that. Secondly, I guess, and this is another question, Under the new Affordable Health Care Act, also known as Obamacare, every American is supposed to have insurance now under that. And as that is implemented, is there any way you guys can apply for reimbursement from the federal government for health care expenses that we provide to folks who just happen to be incarcerated? Okay.
Well, the last one first, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that fully. I know until Obamacare was here, those were excluded. I mean, there's a lot of people incarcerated in prisons and jails throughout the United States, and there's very specific laws on the benefits, that they can receive. Occasionally there is fraud on food stamps and such, but that's not allowed, and we're audited on those things. But I'll check into that. We're always looking for ways to.
I just thought about it because I'm sure a lot of those people that are in there, I shouldn't say guys and ladies, are in there for disobeying a court order, or they may have may be in there for lack of paying child support or whatever, and they may have normal working careers with either insurance or maybe covered to that. It's just something that came to my mind.
We do use their insurance from time to time, and any time that we can, when they're hospitalized. I mean, it doesn't normally kick in when they're getting in-house services, provided by our staff, but anytime they go out, this county is really unique. I don't know of any, there may be others, but I don't know of anybody that actually insures the inmate as they do county employees. They're included in the county's insurance, and we get those better rates from the hospitals in the area.
Well, my intent as a citizen and a taxpayer and elected official, I guess, is I want those guys to have that are incarcerated what the government says, the federal government says we have to have, okay? But I don't want to give them any more than that, okay? And that's my only question to you, sir, is, I trust your judgment on that, and I please do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question of Larry?
Yeah.
Yes.
Larry, at one time, I thought you said there was some kind of a standard in correctional facilities, medical standard. Can you give us more about that?
There are sort of two standards of care. One is a correctional standard of care, and the other is a community standard of care. And I know no one's from juvenile here, but juveniles, under the law of the land, have a community standard of care, which is much more like what you and I get when we go out. A correctional standard of care is still care, but it's a much lower standard of care, and we have to provide that correctional standard of care.
Okay.
And if I could, the second thing is, I think we may still be the only county, I'm pretty sure we were the first county anyway, that actually charges inmates for their care. If they have assets through Joanne's office, we go after those assets. So your question about Obamacare is an excellent one, and we all kind of looked at each other and said, that's, as Larry did, that's something we need to look into. But we don't just sit and let them rack up expenses, et cetera, even when they're warranted, without us trying to go after that. I think we were the first county, maybe still the only one, that charges not only for room and board, but I think we go after expenses for medical care as well.
We have co-pays, much like, we have co-pays. And as family members put money on their account for commissary or phone, we actually dip in and get those co-pays, at least on the medical side. We do that each time.
Thank you.
And if they come back, a lot of folks, if you look at records, are reoccurring, and we carry those balances over. If it's 5 years ago and they're arrested again, they come in and they have money, we get those co-pays.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The benefit of repeat offenders. Do you want to make a motion on either one of these items to accept them?
I'm fine with accepting the corrections. I'd like to put the Parks and Recreation off to next meeting and get more information from Betty, if Betty can make a motion to that effect.
Okay, so your motion is to accept corrections?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Parks and Recreation, Mr. Cronin has moved to hold that for a future meeting. Is that all right with everyone? All right. Moving on to bills for final passage.
Bill number 3904.
No, it's bills for final passage.
Yet one.
We just got one. It's just the
Just
first
one.
one.
Bill number 3904, requested by Gil Copley, sponsored by Nancy Matheny, an ordinance authorizing execution of grant award agreement 12-0626-BHD-12 between the Missouri Foundation for Health and St. Charles County Department of Community Health for receipt of grant funds of $25,000 for basic support funding to supplement health department expenses to better serve the community.
Are there any questions or comments on Bill 3904? Would you read the title and call the roll, please?
An ordinance authorizing execution of grant award agreement 12-0626-BHD-12 between the Missouri Foundation for Health and St. Charles County Department of Community Health for receipt of grant funds of $25,000 for basic support funding to supplement health department expenses to better serve the community. Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Matheny?
Yes.
Councilmember Darty?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Bill passes. Moving on to bills for introduction, Bill 3905.
Bill number 3905, requested by Steve Lauer, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance granting conditional use permit 16217 for a bed and breakfast residence to Edward F. and Katrina R. Burke.
Are there any questions or comments on Bill 3905?
I just have a couple of comments. Are the Burks here tonight? Wayne? I don't think there was really any opposition to this bed and breakfast. However, the Burks, I believe, did agree to put up a fence between the two properties. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I spoke with Mr. Held, and he said he didn't have any problems with it either, as long as they put up a fence. So I'll speak to Mr. Burke, but can we put in did he have an actual fence up, either a 3-wire or whatever defines a real fence?
The condition that the commission recommended was a fence. It didn't describe what type of fence, whether it needed to be a screening fence or anything. So in order to meet that condition, almost anything that's going to be classified as a fence will be acceptable. The council can always be more specific if you want.
Well, that's what I like to do. If he agreed to do a fence, he should do a fence. And what? Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, if it's possible, I'll speak with Mr. Burke. But if he agreed to put up a fence, then he should put up at least a 3 barbed wire fence. You know, that would. I don't know. I'll try to work something out with him, but that would be my opinion.
Mr. Cronin?
At Planning and Zoning Commission, when this became before, Mr. Burke and Mr. Held were there. I asked a specific question, that if a T-post fence would be sufficient. And a T-post fence the answer came back that it was sufficient, okay? You know, for trespassing in Missouri, you can also paint, the post purple every 100 foot too, and that's, if somebody crosses that line, that's also trespassing. So this is a rural area. I think the barbed wire fence is sufficient, okay? I mean, they have them all through my district, and if they're concerned about legal liability, they post it with purple paint every 100 foot, and by law, that's the same as a no trespassing sign. But just to be clear, at that meeting, it was discussed that it was a metal T-post fence, and I don't know if it'd be fair to Mr. Burke to have to make him build that all over again.
As Councilman Cronin indicated, the whole issue that was in the discussion was people trespassing onto the property. And so I think the commission felt that a minimal amount of fence, or this T-post and a 1-wire strand would be sufficient to alert a person where the property line was and they shouldn't go further.
Yeah, that's
okay.
The ground's real rocky there too. Any kind of other fence would be very costly.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on 3905? 3906.
Bill number 3906, requested by Steve Lauer, sponsored by Jerry Darty, an ordinance granting conditional use permit 16423 for a campground to JOK's LLC.
Questions or comments on 3906?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
This bill here, myself and Wayne have spent endless time on this thing as the applicant
indicated before, he wants to change this, amend it down to 14 campers. How this all come about, it's been before the P&Z twice, withdrew once, resubmitted, denied again. The gentleman come to my office along with his father, which owns Two Branch Marinas, and I make it clear that Two Branch Marina is being cited to clean their place up and everything. This is a separate parcel of property. At that time, they asked me what I thought my chances of council giving a conditional use permit. And I said slim to none. Number one, that is 6-1 denial. Number two, the adjacent property owners were opposed to it. And number three, I looked at Mr. Kajar's dad, the owner of Two Branch, and I said, in your track record. I said, now the only chance I think you got is to shrink this trailer park and keep it in the pecan grove. They agreed with that. That's where the site plan that he presented to you tonight and the amended version of this. I talked to all of the property owners except Dardine Real Estate Company because there's a Burlington Railroad track between them and these parcels. I talked to the business owner next to these people, John's Boat Harbor. I talked to the campground across the street where there's 42 campers. I think we've bent over backwards, myself, and I'd like Wayne to come up to go over with a list of stipulations that we'd like to put into a conditional use permit. We met with Wayne and Mr. Kajar this afternoon over this. We're very strict on it, and like I said, as far as Two Branch Marina, the condemnations have happened on the houses, and Wayne can explain what's going to happen there.
Last week I sent the council an email that tried to clarify some of the issues and points that were brought up during the hearing because there was a lot of misinformation regarding the property. In any event, as Councilman Daugherty just indicated, the violations, all of these violations regarding the condition of structures and rubbish and whatnot are on the Two Branch Marina parcel, which is not this one, subject to this petition. This particular piece of property does have a violation in that he's currently got 4 trailers on it, and that's not permitted without a conditional use permit. And but the enforcement of that is in abeyance until this process ends. The other thing that I pointed out in the communication was that there's certain applicable regulations that affect this, and there's been a lot of misunderstanding what applies and doesn't apply. As it relates to the sewer system, a trailer park has to have a septic type of system or a community sewer system, an RV dump station, or they can be self-contained. And as most of you know, RVs are self-contained. As far as the shower facilities and all of those things, people are using chapter, I think it's 610 of the county codes, which deals with tourist camps, which deals with transient types of uses, like a KOA type of campground, and that ordinance, that chapter of the codes does not apply to this type of campground, which is more permanent in nature as far as people coming and going. So I tried to clarify that. The other issue that was brought up was that the septic systems would have to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation. Those requirements, or the floodplain requirements for septic systems, that does not apply to those types of systems. It applies to community systems. And just as a further point, we have approved numerous septic systems all up and down the river for residences. And so if that would have been the case, none of those would have been able to be approved. The other thing that I did is, as we started reviewing this and looking at his revised amendment, I ended up writing out some suggested conditions for the commission to consider if you ended up making a motion to approve this. One was right of entry, so the county could enter the project and make sure that things are being kept up according to the conditions that have been imposed. It indicates that each RV site has to be used at least on a seasonal basis, not as a transient basis. The location of the RV sites and size of the RV sites should be in accordance with this amended site plan. The recreational vehicle must be licensed and ready for highway use. They must have, I'm going to shorten some of these, a pressurized water system, a sewage disposal system, which will have to, what we're suggesting is either a septic system or an RV dumping station. They have to have one of those. Just to have the RV being self-contained is not sufficient. We also addressed solid waste disposal as far as garbage and other things that need to be taken care of, general maintenance of the site, no more than 2 extra trailers, for instance, for boats, in addition to the RV itself. No more than 1 RV on each RV site. We addressed some parking and supervision issues and some boilerplate types of conditions that we have. And I think Jerry was indicating to me that he would want to add another one dealing with the access road not being blocked at any time to inhibit the use for the other people to use that roadway to get to their properties. And in the event, all of those conditions were contained in a suggested list for the council to consider.
And where is that suggested list?
You should have received it in an email last week.
It's part of this email, okay.
However, it's not a part of your ordinance now, and so you would have to amend or ask for a substitute ordinance if you wanted to adopt those.
Since this is substantially different than what went to P&Z, why doesn't this have to go through that process again?
When a person requests something, they can always ask to amend to a lesser degree, a less intensity. They can't go up. He was asking for 50 units, I believe, and so he was dropping it. He couldn't have gone the other way from 50 to 64.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Bill 3907.
Bill number 3907, requested by Steve Lauer, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance granting conditional use permit 16525 for a nursery to Gail Sims.
Questions or comments?
I just make a comment that this is on Hopewell Road, close to Highway N, and the area is, a lot of the houses there are vacant, and what they're doing, I think, is a good thing. I don't have any problems with it. I get no complaints, and it passed plan zone 7-0, so, right, Joe?
Yeah, the actual neighbors came in support of it. They thought it was a really great idea for the community.
Okay, thank you. Bill 3908.
Bill number 3908, requested by Steve Lauer, sponsored by Nancy Matheny, an ordinance amending ordinance 10-096, granting conditional use permit 9491 for boat rental to Joseph T. and Kelly Brazel.
Any questions or comments?
Anybody know anything about the moral fiber of this applicant?
Do I need to go down there and answer questions?
And not participate in the conversation.
He was joking, though.
I know. I wasn't referring to that remark.
Okay. Seriously, any questions? Okay, moving on to the next bill.
Bill number 3909, requested by Joe Brazel, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance amending sections 405.060, 405.065, 405.080, 405.475, and 405.520 of the Unified Development Ordinance of St. Charles County, Ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri, and enacting a new section 405.085 of the Unified Development Ordinance to authorize a new agricultural tourism district.
Questions or comments?
I'll just make a couple comments. This is what we've talked about with the Master Plan Review Committee. They reviewed it. Steve Elman and the administration, we spent a lot of time with Wayne, and Wayne did a great job putting this together. We went through it and spent, I'd say, almost a year on this, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It's basically, I kind of went over it a little bit with the master plan. What it basically does is gives the, in one way it gives wineries a little more latitude, but then it also makes things, we have a little more control too. So it helps us, the county, as well. Wayne put together a real nice design criteria that if they choose to go this route. The winery situation remains the same. Nothing changes there. But this gives people the opportunity to go with more of a winery/lodging situation, or weddings and so forth, like we talked about that a lot of wineries are doing anyway. And then Wayne also put together a design book, which is really nice. If anybody wants to see it, it's recommended designs that we have a little bit more control over now, whereas before we didn't. So we're trying to stick with the larger gables, brick and stone, and things like that, more German heritage and other types of architecture. So this is really kind of a neat package that Wayne and Harold and we sat down and put a lot of effort into it. So it turned out well.
You didn't slip anything in here about 911 towers?
I did, but I don't want anybody to notice it.
Any questions or comments? Okay, moving on to the next one.
Bill number 3910, requested by John Greifsue, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance improving execution of an intergovernmental agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for Phase 3, Missouri Route 364.
Questions or comments?
I got a couple questions real quick. Or Steve or Chuck or...
I can try.
Who? Chuck?
I'll try.
Oh, Darden Prairie had a big meeting this week. I guess you heard it. Don, were you there? Or no? Is there going to be any kind of public meetings on this phase, or what's the... I've got a couple calls from people in that area that were concerned about Post Road, or one of the roads getting cut off or something. Honestly, I'm not real familiar with the project, but I just was wondering. I didn't know what to tell them. I didn't know there will be public comments, or I don't know.
Don, if you disagree, but I mean, we signed that confidentiality agreement. I don't know to what extent we can talk about this, at least not in a private or public meeting.
I think the only thing we could say is the process itself is a design-build process, and there are 4 teams that are allowed to submit proposals now. They've been shortlisted, and they're free to submit whatever they want. They know the budget that MoDOT has, and they are to submit their best proposal that they think suits the needs of MoDOT and the local communities. But the design is up to them, and it's up to the design-build review team to decide what the best submittal is. Insofar as the administration is concerned, what we have said to both MoDOT and anybody that would listen to us, that we want to get all the way to Highway 64. That is our stated goal, that we want to get as many lanes out there as we can. Beyond that, I don't think we really staked out.
Beyond that, we haven't taken a position.
So the bottom line is there really isn't a design, so there really isn't any answers to what the concerns might even be. But
that's the beauty and the problem with design build. You save a lot of money by doing it, but what you pay on the other end is uncertainty about what exactly you're going to have when it's over.
And so this is a MoDOT project, though, right? A state project.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And this is just adding some additional money to the...
What this bill about, Councilman, is there were some monies in MoDOT that were freed up this past year. They could be from projects that maybe they decided not to do, or projects that were maybe there was money saved. So all this money was pooled together, and then throughout the state, all of the MoDOT districts were allowed a certain percentage of that fund. And our district was allowed $6-some-odd million, and they came to us and said, if you will partner with us and come up with some money, we'll devote all that money to Page Avenue, which is what occurred, and we have agreed to submit to you the proposal for $500,000 on a $6-point-some-odd million project.
Great.
Again.
That it? No. Mr. Cronin.
Since this is design build, this is just a comment for you to take with you. I use Page Extension 364 a fair amount, and I also use the new Salt River Road a lot. And I love that Salt River Road because you can get without any traffic from 79 to 370, okay? But the problem you got is you can't get from 70 to Page without hitting like mid-rivers or anything with a lot of stoplights. So when you're looking at that, if there's any way you can make a road that would be traffic light free to get from 70 to that highway extension, that would be a tremendous benefit to people like in St. Peters and O'Fallon in my district.
The county executive feels very passionate about that, so I'll let him answer that question.
Well, again, we don't know what, but on the final phase of Page, we very well may have the first half of that looks exactly like Phase 2, and the last half that looks exactly like Salt River Road, hopefully with just maybe one stoplight.
That'd be great.
But it'd be great if we could get rid of all the stoplights. But the key, and again, when we signed up for this, we said it has to go all the way, because we can't ask people on the far end to kick in and not get anything for it. It's all they get is a promise in the future. So, but other than that, I can't tell you how many lanes it's going to be. I can't tell you how many overpasses there are going to be. We'll just have to see how it all comes out.
Bill 3911.
Bill number 3911, requested by Betty Ann Kramer, sponsored by Nancy Matheny, an ordinance amending Section 250.500 of the ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri relating to fees at county parks.
And we had questions earlier on that one from Mr. Cronin. Do we have any other questions? And when you send his answer, if you would copy all of us, please. Bill 3912.
Bill number 3912, requested by Steve Ellman, sponsored by Nancy Matheny, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute a renewal of the license agreement with Ameren UE for county communications equipment on the Sioux Power Plant smokestack at a cost of approximately $3,947.85 per year.
Questions or comments? Bill 3913.
Bill number 3913, requested by Steve Ellman, sponsored by Nancy Matheny, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to sign a consent to annexations as requested by the City of St. Charles for annexation of a portion of South Main Street and as requested by the City of O'Fallon for annexation of a portion of Mexico Road from the east right-of-way line of Guthrie Road east to the north right-of-way line of the Norfolk and Southern Railway.
Questions or comments? That concludes bills for introduction. There is a tabled bill. Do you want to do anything with that this evening?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull substitute bill 3889 off the table and request Wayne to come up.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That removes substitute bill 3889 from the table. Please proceed.
When we introduced this bill, Mr. Brazel was kind of unclear. He thought it was more government, and basically this bill puts less restrictions on the residents. A perfect example of this is if you get a place that you can take your camper, say you want to go fishing or deer hunting on the river or whatever, you can get the permit to put the camper there, but you can't take the boat along to get to the island to go deer hunting or go fishing. So this basically straightens that up. Wayne's got a summary to explain to you.
On the overhead projection, one of the things I want to point out, it was really unclear what this bill was doing, and it's basically fine-tuning some stuff from my perspective. But just to go over the basic changes that this bill does and comparing it to the current ordinance. In our districts, under the current ordinance, one RV or trailer is permitted. Under the proposed, the same thing. In an A district with residents, under the current ordinance, one RV or trailer is permitted and 2 unlicensed vehicles. I might note that is in conflict with the property maintenance code that doesn't permit unlicensed vehicles. The proposed ordinance would still allow the one RV or trailer and changes the 2 unlicensed vehicles to 2 additional trailers, for example, to accommodate boat on a trailer or a utility trailer. In an A district that's undeveloped and platted prior to January of 1973, the current ordinance allows one RV for 180 days. The proposed ordinance still allows the RV for 180 days, but recognizes that currently we're chasing people down for enforcement efforts because they have additional trailers at their RV site, particularly boats. And so what we're doing to keep it similar to what an A district with a residence would have, we're proposing 2 additional trailers be allowed with that RV on that undeveloped site. There are some other changes within the ordinance, but it's basically trying to clarify what's a trailer, what isn't a trailer, what's an RV, that type of thing.
Mr. Cronin?
Wayne, I guess my issues with this bill were, I mean, there's no issue with it down along the floodplain, of course, but where you have county subdivisions right next to City of O'Fallon or City of St. Peter subdivisions that have a little tighter rules than ours, that was my concern. I did give the bill both to the mayor of St. Peter's and the mayor of O'Fallon to have their staff look at. They haven't came back to me. I'm going to give it to the mayor of Wentzville next week. If you wouldn't mind getting me that copy of that, if you would email that to me, I'd like to get it to them. And just basically, I want to try to keep peace in my district to make sure we don't do something that will have a negative effect for those cities.
I did tell Jerry I'd support this bill because after the meeting we did talk, and if it's less restrictive, I'm in favor of it. And I'm not sure I agree with Mr. Cronin that we don't need to, I mean, out of a courtesy, it's up to the other council members, but typically, you know, I don't defer to my cities for our ordinances, but...
I'd just be nice.
So, it's Jerry's call.
I'd like to call for question.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll vote on Bill number 3889.
Substitute Bill number 3889, an ordinance amending Section 405.420 of the Unified Development Ordinance of St. Charles County, Ordinances of St. Charles County, Missouri. Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Matheny?
Yes.
Councilmember Darty?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
No.
Bill passes. Next is announcements and miscellaneous. Are there any announcements and miscellaneous to be brought up this evening? I would like to congratulate the people that won in the last election, and I would also like to express that Mr. Doherty has worked extremely hard, and I'm sorry that you won't be joining us again next year, but you are the hardest working council member I think I've ever known.
Thank you.
And appreciate that. Anyone else with any comments? We're adjourned.